Hello everyone. Razorblade Mango here, and today I am joined once again by a very special guest on the channel. I had him on the channel, I think 9 months ago at the time of recording this,
Oh wow.
and yeah, it's been 9 months. I can actually remember when we did that first video, but I was thinking I was like, yeah, 9 months. Damn. But IanWaffles is back on the channel. So welcome, IanWaffles, once again. Thanks for coming by again. I really appreciate having you on the channel, making the time
Hey.
for little old me.
Hey, thanks for having me. No, I always enjoy talking to you. One of my favorite YouTubers, so getting to be on here, it's just like, holy shit, I get to talk to him again. I want to see how he's doing. So
Yeah. How are you doing? How have
I
things been
am
going?
doing great. I'm doing great. Everything's going well at work. The weather has decided to stop trying to kill us. It's become fall, so that's nice. Uh, so it's been going well. And then my dog, he just got back from he was feeling sick for a while, and we were worried about him, and now he's
Oh,
all happy and healthy. So
good. Excellent. So the reason I wanted to have you back this time, outside of I just enjoy talking to you,
oh,
is this is a video that I've had in mind for a few months, but I like, knowing me, it's like I want to wait for the right time. I don't know when that time is, but I know it. I know it when I feel it, and I figured now would be the right time to do it. The main reason that I wanted to have you back here is to talk about that ridiculously successful Archie Sonic video that you did. That was not out at the time of our last conversation 9 months ago.
correct.
So, yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations on that video. That was wow. Like I knew it would hit because I think you sent me. I don't remember if you sent me like an early version of it or something, but I remember seeing it and I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a good one. This is gonna be a hit.
Well, thank you.
I did not expect it to be like, because right now, as of, and I wrote this number down, as of today, August 4th at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, it sat at 489,194 views,
Yeah,
which
it's
is
probably gonna hit half a
crazy.
million. It's probably gonna hit like 500,000 by the end
Hmm.
of this week.
Yeah,
So
that's crazy. How does that make you feel that nearly it's gotten like nearly 500,000 views at this point?
oh no, it completely blew me away because like I put the same amount of heart into it as my other videos, and all
Yeah.
of them I really care about and want them to take off. But the big one I wanted to take off was my Kingdom Hearts 2 video, which who knows what time. But so I made this one kind of thinking it'll probably be the same, or it's like, I really want people to like hear about this because it's just a thing that I'm really passionate about, but I don't
Mhm.
hear anyone talk about, in at least in the way I want to talk about it. And so it just kind of blew me away. One, that there was so many people watching it who were like, I've only heard crappy things about this comic, or I've never heard about this at all, and you've convinced me to read it, or this was just really compelling or really interesting. But the bigger thing was people coming in and being like, thank you for finally saying it. I was like, oh, you people exist? There's people who've read it? So it's been pretty overwhelming, but in a really good way. I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, I like to go back to that video whenever I get the chance to look at the comments, and it's like crazy how many nice positive comments there are on that video. Like, for something that's Sonic the Hedgehog, I normally relate to being like a very like volatile fan base where they each have their own like microcosms of different points of view and all that, and they clash a lot of the time, which is, it's weird to
Yeah.
see. But that video in the comments section is mostly very wholesome, very nice. It's nice to look through it and just
I
see like all the nice feedback that you've gotten for it. I think the one you pinned was, or maybe you liked it or either pinned it, where I think somebody said like Ian is Archie Sonic or something along those
Oh,
lines.
yeah. Yeah, someone said something like that where they said, since you voice Archie Sonic in this video, it just sounds like Sonic is like talking about how great he is.
Yeah,
Which was funny. But yeah, no, I agree. I look at those comments all the time just because it's just the amount of comments that they'll have like these long paragraphs about like their experience, and
hmm,
then what the comment, and then they'll just say thank you at the end. Like so
Yeah.
many thank you. Oh wow. Like, and really I think the worst comment I've gotten, that's like a real comment, not just people being like, "Isn't Archie Sonic like cringe? I don't understand." The people who like didn't watch it or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, or like power scalers who don't know what they're on. Those are the funniest comments where people are like, "Well, wait a second, Archie," because if you don't know, in the power scaling community, Archie Sonic's one where like people like to say like he can beat Goku, he can beat Superman. So a lot of like the young teenage boys or girls who like get into that stuff will see this video and they'll see best Sonic on it and they'll be like, actually, he can't beat Goku, and then they just leave the comment.
Oh
And it's
my
like,
god.
it's like someone didn't watch the video. But the
Ugh.
most negative I've gotten are just people who have said things like, oh, I slightly disagree with this idea, but you make a really compelling argument for it.
Oh, that's
So,
good.
even if I don't, yeah. So they're all still really positive. So yeah.
No one is telling you that they want to piss on your corpse for singing the praises of Archie Sonic.
No, 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 no. No, it's surprisingly wholesome. Which I mean,
That's great.
surprisingly, I think all my videos have really nice comment
Yeah,
sections.
they
I've just
do. Yeah,
I've been
I
very
don't
lucky.
I don't think I've seen. I'm trying to think back to all the comments, and I don't normally look at comment sections outside of the occasional morbid curiosity with certain things, but the videos that you've made, their comment sections are normally like really nice, really chill. I think that speaks to just the positive vibe that you cultivate with the channel as well. I think that has like an outreaching effect to the people that come to the channel. Unless you're just a complete fucking douchebag. You're not gonna come you're not no one's gonna come to your channel and see you being like really positive and nice and think to themselves, I'm gonna ruin this guy's day because I don't think Archie Sonic could beat Goku. It's like no, not really. No, like it's not gonna that's not gonna happen if you just if it's somebody like you that has a very like positive, upbeat, charismatic presentation to their videos, and really great editing too from the people that you collaborate with. That video, the Archie Sonic one, like I was amazed by the like how high quality the production was and how like really snappy and like consistently interesting the editing was in it. What's the name of the editor that you used for that video again?
So that's Lowart,
Mm,
Lowart.
that's right. I remember
Yeah.
he did a few other ones, right?
He did that one, and then he did the Maleficent one, which the Maleficent
Mustn't
one is
one.
just like very like basic, like clip selection. Um, uh, because it was like 5 minutes. But no, with the Archie videos. So the funny story behind this is that like 3 or 4 years ago, I like
Mhm.
messaged him when he was like a smaller channel, and we were in like a Discord. He had like a Discord server if you like patron him or whatever. And I just like I'm just some random guy, and I just messaged him like, "Hey, dude, here's this cool Archie Sonic thing. I'm really bad at making videos and scripts, but like it would be cool to collaborate on it because I don't know what the fuck to do." And he's like, "That sounds interesting. Maybe I'll get back to you on that." And then like 3 years passed, and then I just randomly messaged him again, and he was just like, "You know what? I was just thinking about that." And he's like, because I was like, "Do you remember that time when you promised some random nobody that you've never met before that you would work on a video series about Archie Sonic?" And he's like, "Yes, I do. Let's begin." So like, so
No, it's great.
just like the funniest, randomest like way of doing that. So on his channel, we've been doing an entire retrospective on the comic itself, and that was kind of going to be my, he gets the video on his channel, and then I get to help write it and all that kind of stuff and kind of get my thoughts out. But he does all the work, 'cause he does all the editing. But then for the Sonic one, this is a video that has been like near and dear to my heart of like something I've wanted to talk about forever. So I wrote it, he edited it, and then it went on, and then I also did the voiceover for my channel. So we've basically been collaborating for a really long time working on these. And I remember when he first showed me the first video on his channel about the Archie Sonic comics, and he was like, "Oh yeah, here's kind of what the editing will look like." I was like, "Did you just like cut out the characters and like panels, and you made like original moving backgrounds?" And
Yeah.
I was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, no, it's really easy." I'm like, "You're an insane person. I thought we were just going to scroll down the page." So as soon as I saw what he was capable of, I was like, okay, no, for real, I gotta write this video. I gotta get him to edit it,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna get this out to people. And yeah, no, it's probably the best looking video on the channel. So
Oh yeah, easily I would say. And this is even somebody who's biased in favor of Kingdom Hearts. I think that like I said, the production value of that Archie video when he's doing all the transitions from the different panels, the cutouts. I was it's like, that's possible with
Yeah.
this kind of like you can do that. That's crazy. When I
Yeah,
saw all of
exactly.
that, but so that this is an idea that you've had for a long. It's very obvious too that it's a subject matter that's near and dear to your heart. But you've had this idea for 3 years. Is that what you said? 3 to 4 years.
Or,
You've had
or
this idea.
4 years ago was when I told him about it. I've had this video in mind probably for like 5 or 6 years,
Ah,
um, because it's just because I've been reading the
wow.
comics since I was a kid, and then just I knew that like I think it was probably around like 2016, 2017,
Hmm.
where I had found them under my bed, and I was like, "Oh yeah, the Sonic comics." And so I was looking through them. I was like, "These are just actually good. Holy shit, what the heck? Like why are these just good and they're so unique and interesting?" And so then I reread it again. I was like, "No, I truly really love this," but I'm just like, "How do you explain this to someone?" Because because the parts that I love are from issue 160 onward. That's 160 plus miscellaneous issues of baggage and history that you somehow have to explain to an audience who's going to be like, what is a Sally Acorn, what's a Scourge, and then you have to be like, wait, there's like some love triangle drama, I don't know, that kind of sounds stupid. And it's like, okay, it is stupid, but the new writers make it really cool, and you have to see how it was stupid for it to make sense for why it becomes so good, because it retroactively becomes this really interesting narrative and blah 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 blah. And it's just, so in my head it was always so just untenable of like, how do I explain this to someone? And eventually I just said, fuck it. I'm just going to tell it to you like, and hopefully you'll just figure it out. So, so that was kind of my breaking point, was just being like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm just going to gush about it. And hopefully the energy translates to the audience, that they get it. And they
Yeah.
go, okay, I see what's cool about this.
No, I got it. So my history with Sonic the Hedgehog is somebody who's very much on the outside looking in, where I have friends that are into Sonic the Hedgehog, and like Richard, for instance, he likes Sonic the Hedgehog. He's told me about it, and I'm kind of like, when he talks about Sonic, I must admit, and this sounds like incredibly mean and incredibly rude. There's like a natural part of my brain that, like, when I hear Sonic the Hedgehog, it just like automatically tunes out a little bit. And this is even a matter of like, oh, Mario is the much better video game, Nintendo versus Sonic. It has nothing to do with that. It just has to do with I just don't have that much, you know, history or familiarity with Sonic the Hedgehog outside of the basic major players. And I'm not totally ignorant to Sonic the Hedgehog, because I used to play some of the video games when I was younger, like Sonic Heroes. I played some of the Sonic games on Game Boy, but I'm nowhere near as familiar with it like I am like Mario or Legend of Zelda, or stuff like that, like iconic video game mascots like that.
Yeah, well, and that's
But
probably why. Because I had, for the audience to know, I recommended you a few stories to read before we talked, and
yes,
the one that you were least invested in was the one that is like the one arc that is basically like, here's only game characters, and they're interacting, and they're just going on a little emerald quest, like it's the video game, right?
yeah.
Whereas the one that was actually them being real people and characters and storylines, that really hit for you. So,
Yeah, it has
and
real stakes. I thought they were dying when I saw that. I went, "Oh my
Sonic,
god, they kill people in this comic book? That's great." And
yeah,
then
and
I
they
was like,
do.
"Oh."
It's not those people.
One the one that was interesting from your video that I saw was the one where Sally dies, where Robotnik gets her, and I think Sonic goes back in time to a reality where they have to like meet again and fall in love again, or something
Yeah,
along those lines. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And
yeah,
then there's this certain specific stories that are brought up in your video that I thought, okay, that's interesting. That's new for a Sonic noob like me. That's something I never really thought Sonic was capable of. But outside of him, I really like the thing that I've always mentioned to you. The thing that drew me the most in with Sonic, Archie Sonic, that you talked about in the video, was the relationship between Sonic and Sally, which I
yeah,
quite liked, because I'm a sucker for a good, nice, heartwarming, blossoming little like romance between two characters. It gave me a lot of like Aang and Katara vibes, like with the two of
yeah,
them. Something like uh like Trevor and Sypha from Netflix Castlevania, like stuff like that. But I saw that and I thought, oh, okay, this is something that I can get behind. This little nice little blossoming romance from a friendship where they constantly tease each other and stuff like that. And I gravitate to things like that. It gives a story a lot of texture, a lot more emotional investment. Because I don't think something like I guess I'll go back to Castlevania. I don't think the ending of the Castlevania Netflix show would be as impactful for me if it wasn't for the relationship that Trevor and Sypha develop throughout the entire series. And I guess I feel like I would feel that way with Archie Sonic. Like if they took away that element to it, I would probably be less interested in it. Even though there are still things about it that I do find interesting that were presented in your video and the issues that you recommended me.
Yeah, so for example, one of the issues is where they kind of go on a little stakeout, and that's kind of like the moment where Sonic and Sally are kind of trying to rekindle a little bit of their relationship because they've been at odds for a while because of like old stories. So did you kind of feel like that kind of come through in that little story?
Hmm.
Like, did you kind of was that kind of what you were enjoying about it? I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's the you can tell that they have baggage between the two of
Yeah.
them, but you're witnessing the events and the time healing the wounds to where they can finally move on and start to rebuild their relationship. It's like they want to do it, probably more Sonic than Sally, but
Mhm.
there is still that it's not quite there yet to take it to the next level, or that because they have to find some kind of good footing or comfort in order to like fully allow themselves to open back up themselves to each other and rekindle that lost thing. That's the vibe that I got from the video and the issues that you recommended that I quite liked.
Yeah, and I guess to give you kind of like an idea of like what makes the comic so great
Yes,
for me
please
is that
educate
so like
me.
yeah, so I sent you that issue, and so that's a perfect one. So that one has like this little. It starts off with like Antoine and Bunny, who are characters you don't really know. They're
No.
they're gonna get married. They're gonna get married, and then therefore Sally is feeling like kind of she's like realizing how distant she's been from all her friends, and then so she goes on
Yes.
this little sting operation. She kind of talks to confides that's the word confides in Bunny that like she's like yeah like I'm being jealous really selfish here
Yeah.
and she's like and if and so you have that and then you have Sonic talking to Antoine where he's like man fuck Sally like what the heck is her problem like she like she you know she hasn't been like helping or doing anything forever and then she sends us on a sting operation when you say you're going to get married like does she
Mhm.
even care and then by the end of it you see these little moments where they kind of tease each other and Sonic very clearly took Antoine's words to heart that like she's been through a lot Sonic like we could maybe cut her some slack even if that doesn't make up for what she did and then
Yeah.
by the end he like princess carries her away now all of that you can kind of just sense throughout the issue but what makes it all like even better is when you go oh Antoine the reason he's able to give if you know Antoine then his character is that he starts the series as a coward and then over time different writers make him different things they make him like a stone cold warrior for no reason then he goes back to being a coward then he's replaced by an evil doppelganger which even though they said it was him but then they retcon that to be not the case so then he was out of the story for like 25 issues and now he's back
Oh
so
my
like
god.
you have all this baggage and
Uh.
there's a story right before this where one of the plot lines that the old writers had was that the evil Antoine doppelganger was poisoning the king and also Antoine's dad so the new writer writes a story where Antoine's father dies in a hospital bed and Antoine comes to him and he's like I'm so sorry that you have to die knowing that your son is a coward and a failure like here's all the things that I did to the team that all these things and people really didn't like Antoine also so like he's kind of admitting all these flaws and then his father tells him he's like is this a joke despite your jealousies you did this and this you won the heart of a beautiful warrior blah all these things that's who you really are Antoine and that's who I want you to be and then his father actually dies and he gives him that grace of like no like you are all these problems these things you had but you have grown past those things as well and that's who I want you to be I'm proud of you which then calls back to a story where Antoine wanted to convince his dad, he was really brave, but he did it by tricking him, by like pretending that Sonic was being evil Sonic, and they beat him up or whatever. And that was like that was some old issue. So when he says that he's proud of him, that actually hits, because he's not proud of him because he was tricking his dad. He's proud. His dad is proud of him in spite of his fears. So you have all that you have all that history, and you place that on this scene with Sonic. Now it's not just some guy is giving Sonic this voice of reason about how Sally needs a little bit of grace. He is able to do that because he was also given that same amount of kindness from his own dad for his own weaknesses. So he's extending that to Sally and saying, Sonic, yeah, that doesn't make up for what she did, but we're her friends. We could stand to be a little kinder. And I love the little interaction where he goes, well, we've all had it rough lately. And then Antoine's response is just, boy, that's why I'm so happy that we all have each other to get through it. So that scene now has like all that weight and context, which just makes it even better. And that's kind of how this whole comic is that in the really good era, every single scene, every single character interaction has that weight to it. And so when you get to the end where Sonic is carrying, Sally away, that's something that they used to do all the time on missions, is he would carry her around. But what makes it so strong and so impactful is that you can see on her face, she's like smiling, but it's a little crooked and she's looking away. So there's kind of this feeling of like she's happy, but she also looks maybe a bit guilty, like, am I, should I be allowed to like enjoy this? Is he actually okay with me? And these little details and all the little character interactions, all these little moments, they just give so much richness to the characters and make them feel human, which is something that I don't really feel from anything in Sonic, which is why I felt so compelled to make this video. Because I'm like, no, this is like a Sonic who really feels like just a character that I can get invested in. And not only that, all the characters surrounding him are like that. And they all have these really human intricacies to them. So that's just kind of a one example of the stuff you read where it's like, on the surface, it's pretty good. But when you actually have read a lot of stuff in this section as well, you have all these little details that just make it so great. So sorry for the big tangent.
No, please. The things that you're saying about all the emotional texture that are given to these characters, it almost makes me annoyed, because I'm not saying like you are annoying me. I'm saying like I'm annoyed at the idea of there is this version of Sonic the Hedgehog that has all this emotional texture and these character dynamics, and yet outside of this series in the comics, it doesn't really feel like anything else I've seen from Sonic even comes like a quarter of the way close to capturing that kind of vibe, or I guess sense. It's almost like Sega and Sonic Team are afraid to trust in their maybe younger audience to really get into a Sonic the Hedgehog that would display these character dynamics and this emotional texture in a video game or a movie or a TV show. Because a lot of the stuff that I've seen with Sonic the Hedgehog, and even the stuff that I've liked, because I do quite like the movies, the live action Sonic the Hedgehog movies. Those are surprisingly good. I actually like them more than the Mario Brothers movie, but the thing that bugs me about them is that they always feel very surface level enjoyable. It's almost like they're scared to really push it even further as far as creating interesting character dynamics, because they go, oh, if the children aren't laughing, the children aren't enjoying it. And I feel like that's a trap. It's a trap with modern American animation that Sonic the movie unfortunately does fall into. Not as harshly as others do, but it's something that holds it back, I feel like, from maybe finding an even bigger audience, people like me who would be into stuff like that. And it's the same with the video games. Like I have no interest in things like Sonic Forces or Frontiers. Is that what the last one was? The Breath of the Wild clone one? Yeah. Frontiers or Forces or Boom or any of this other stuff. I don't care, because all I see when I look at Sonic is just, oh, I gotta go fast and I gotta glitch through this level because they didn't polish it properly, and oh, I interact with these characters and I just give like quippy dialogue every so often that's not funny or sounds like it was just embarrassingly written. If it annoys me too, is because it's just, if they took the writing of some just that the 173 through 177 that you recommended to me, if that was translated into a video game or even a movie or a cartoon or something, I would be all over that shit. I would be
Yeah.
like, okay, this is something I can get into, and I would be back for more. Like if they made an Archie Sonic video, or not even necessarily Archie Sonic, but a video game with that kind of writing, with that kind of emotional investment, with that kind of, really high stakes, I feel like Sega could do a lot more interesting things with Sonic the Hedgehog outside of what they're only really feel comfortable doing with it now. If that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Well, and sadly, it's because of Archie that I think they're a little more, and like some of their gaming decisions, but it's because of Archie
Yeah.
and that they're kind of afraid to do that, just simply because, a lot of the comic before was so melodramatic and so kind of like ridiculous, not ridiculous in a dumb way, but like ridiculous in the sense of like it would be too dark or too edgy or too moody and like it
Uh,
wouldn't be fun. And so like and a lot of people really hated that, which is why they brought on a new writer who to come in. Like, you have the whole drama of like, Tails seeing Sonic making out with a girl he likes and being like, I hate you, blah. And then the girl he's kissing is like, don't go and comfort him, Sonic. There's nothing you could say or do. And the Sonic's like, okay. and, he,
yeah,
and then
that's bizarre.
he just doesn't. And then the story after that ends with like Sonic walking off in the distance with Fiona, the girl, and you did literally the last shot. Like this is what they wanted to end you on. Like, oh, that's the big stinger. Is Tails behind a tree watching them crying?
Oh yeah, I remember that from the video, and I remember going, "What the hell? This
Yeah,
is like some soap opera crap." And
yes,
Sonic the Hedgehog, like, this would go like this would push it too far for me. It's to like
yes, and
melodrama or anything like
yeah.
that.
And that's kind of that's kind of the big shame is that that's kind of what people remember Archie for. And again, that's where, I get a lot of comments who are like, I've only ever heard horrible things about this comic.
Hmm.
What you're telling me, like the best version of Sonic was actually in this, hidden here, like in this random comic that everyone said was bad? I'm like, yeah, it's just because no one ever, understandably, no one
Yeah.
ever gets this far. Another funny thing is that, like, so for example, that other story I sent you, where it's kind of just the game characters hanging out.
Hmm.
Again, if I just send that to anyone, then they're just like, okay, this is like Shadow, Blaze, is all these characters. And again, like what's so great about the comic is that if you actually know all the characters leading up to that, you actually know that like that arc's actually really important for Amy's character, because it's actually the moment where she's kind of stepping out and being like a real freedom fighter and like really like committing to helping people and like doing all these things and like
Hmm.
showing how far she's come. And then the other character is Shadow, who in the story is kind of in between of like, do I take this gem and like give it to the people I'm working for, or do I basically help save Blaze's world? And if you don't know anything about this character, then you're just like, well, okay, obviously he's gonna choose the right thing, and like then we're bada bing, bada boom, we're done. And so what makes Shadow's story actually really compelling is that if you know all of his character stuff in the comic itself, is that his whole journey is he's like, what's my purpose? What do I need to be? What do I need to do? I was literally created for something. Like not like he's a genetically enhanced mutant thing. So he's like, what's my goal? And so he's told your goal is you protect Mobius, which is the planet they're on. So you protect that with your life. That is your job. That is your duty. And this he has this connection to this little girl named Maria who died, and basically her last kind of wish was basically like go and you need to go and protect the world. I believe in you. And so because of all that, there's this whole storyline where Shadow basically believes, okay, if this is my job, then I need to do this perfectly. I need to make sure that like I don't need help. I don't need other people to do these things, and everyone's a tool. I'm a tool. He like basically says like I'm a living weapon. That's my job. And then the whole story is about confronting Shadow on that well, you live in like the Archieverse, dude. Like there are like demigods all over the place who can kick your ass. So like you actually do need help. You actually do need to treat yourself like a person. You actually do need to know that like it's okay to fail. It's okay to get better. How are you going to be the ultimate life form if you won't allow yourself to get better, if you already think you're better? And then so then you get to this story where he has that little scene with Blaze where he's like, hey, because he's very clearly uncomfortable this whole time about doing this. And he basically tells her like, hey, I just wanted to apologize, but my mission and my world have to come first. I will fight you without regret. And then she's like, well, then why are you trying so hard to apologize? So you can see Shadow having this little internal struggle of his desire to just be a good person versus my desire to just fulfill my duty, which is that I need to protect the world for this person I really care about. And so that clashes, which is a really cool little dilemma. But you
Mm.
know by the end, oh, he's going to choose good. You want to see Shadow come to this point where he's like, no, you know what? I'm going to protect, as Amy says, why, if you wanted to protect Mobius, why don't you protect all worlds? And so Shadow goes beyond, by the end of the story, Shadow is going beyond his duty, beyond his role. And he's saying, you know what? Fuck a gun, fuck all the people who I work for. Protecting a world is more important than fulfilling my mission. And then you have Rouge basically being like, no, we're going to take it. He's like, no, you are not going to take it or I will make you, and then he leaves. So that's like the end of his character arc of him like firmly cementing himself as just a hero in general, not bound to duty or, the people from the past. But you won't know that if you're just reading it. You just read it as just like, okay,
Right.
like Shadow's having a little moment, I guess, and then he like gives in. Cool.
Or you're playing the video game with his dual pistols and
Yeah.
edgy rock music.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the fun thing about the comic is even the most like we're just hanging out with the game characters actually has like all this depth and all this weight to it that
Yeah.
like really like feels so strong. But how do you but that's the dilemma with my video, right? Is how do you pitch that to someone? Well, you just say fuck it and you throw them in and hope they like it.
Yeah, that's really a rock and a hard place with that story because most people, I think me included, to be fair, in all honesty, is if I'm told that there's this comic series that's really really great, but the first like 170 issues are shit,
Are trash.
and I'm gonna be like, no thanks. That's like that whole like a video game. The first 40 hours are garbage, but it gets a lot better after that.
It gets good 30 episodes in.
Yeah, it gets good in the second season. It gets good in the third season. It's like no, I'm out. But I guess the benefit with comics is that you don't need to. You're not. It's not like a video game where you're forced to play the garbage in the beginning in order to get to the good stuff. You can just simply, like you said, just be thrown into the deep end and just hope you don't drown. And for the people that don't drown or don't bounce off of it, I think they would find something that is quite interesting and quite rewarding as an experience.
Yeah. Well, and I guess to go back to my video, that's kind of what it was sort of there for is like, even if you never read it, I want someone to watch the video and be like, they kind of get to feel a little bit of the emotional journey of Sonic's character, through the video, through my passion, through like reading the lines. Because I very kind of tried to have it be like, here's, different parts of his character. But as I'm doing that, I'm kind of also like kind of shoving in a bit of recap so that you know where we are in the timeline. And so like you still get to kind of follow his journey and his story. And so hopefully by the end of the video, even if you never read the comic, you feel like, oh, wow, like I kind of watched a little, I guess like, in anime, they do like recap movies. It's like I kind of got to watch like a recap movie of Archie Sonic, the character.
So one thing I wanted to talk to you about, I don't know if I haven't really looked into this so much, but I was just curious if you knew anything about this. The thing that kind of caught my attention with Archie Sonic is because I mentioned to Richard that I was gonna have you on to talk about Archie Sonic. His almost immediate reaction was, "Oh, that comic," and I'm like, "What does that mean?" And he goes, "Well, there's like, they can't do it anymore because of all the controversy." I'm like, "What controversy?" And he didn't like get into it weirdly, so I was like, "Huh." Something to like ask Ian about and put that in my notes. I don't know if it's anything like really major or whatever. I was just really curious what that was.
Yeah, so basically because I mentioned at the end of my video of like there was a lawsuit and then the comic just kind of got canceled. Which isn't like,
that's right.
yeah. So basically what happened is that so it is actually kind of very interesting. There's like whole videos on this thing. So one of the previous writers, like one of the first writers on the comic, Ken Penders, who is best known for really expanding like the Knuckles lore. And like really because he got a whole Knuckles spin-off comic series where he was able to do literally anything he wanted, like explore broken families, He used a he used a Holocaust poem and
Oh
replaced
my god.
out
Hmm.
all of the people with like animals, and he put that in the
Wow.
comic. He has Nazi echidnas who say "Hail Dimitri," and like instead of putting their hands up, they make like a L sign. Um, so like he does like a lot of really ridiculous things that are definitely ambitious. But he's he's
Okay.
one of the he's one of the most like controversial writers on the whole franchise. So
Ah.
basically, what happened is that so Sega eventually made a game called Sonic the Hedgehog, the Dark Brotherhood, I think is what yeah is like the Dark Chronicles or whatever. And so during that game, it is about them fighting a advanced a lost technologically advanced species of echidnas, which are Knuckles people, who were locked in the Twilight Zone, I believe or the Twilight Cage is what it's called, and they have now come back with a female pink echidna who is like a cybernetic, half cybernetic or whatever, and then they team up and they fight these guys. Well, in the Sonic comics, Ken Penders had created and they're called the Dark Brotherhood. In the Sonic comics, Ken Penders had created something called the Dark Legion, who were a sect of technologically advanced echidnas who get locked in the Twilight Zone. And one of the main characters of that story is Knuckles' girlfriend, who is named Julie Sue, who is a pink, techno echidna. So he saw all this, and someone came to him and was basically like, "Hey, are you getting like royalties for your characters being basically obviously used or whatever?" And so he looked into it, and he felt he had a case to make that Sega had taken his ideas. Well, naturally, the obvious thing that they immediately go is, Ken, you worked for Archie, which works for us, so anything you make is ours. So like we can do whatever we want with your stuff or like call back to it. Um, and so he was like, no, no, no. For you see, I never signed a contract that said that I gave away all my characters. And they're like, that's fucking ridiculous. Of course you did. So Archie looked into it and they could not find his paper. They could not prove that he had actually signed away his characters because Archie was so mismanaged at the time that they either lost it or they legitimately never had him sign a contract that sent over ownership of all his characters. So he legally he didn't win the case, but because Sega just assumed that it would just be thrown out, they didn't go to court with him over it. And so he won the first layer of the battle. So then they had to come to court, and because Archie did not want to like have to pay all these legal fees, because Sega's like, oh, you fucking figure it out. That was your problem. You failed, and they
Yeah.
don't want to lose they don't want to lose the license to Sonic. Obviously, that makes them some money, I would assume. So basically, what they did is that it kind of ended in a stalemate, and they just settled out of court, gave Ken all of his characters, and then they completely rebooted the franchise.
Hmm.
Which means that we not only lost all of the characters Ken made, which were a ton, and like the new writers had made them really compelling, interesting characters. But so not only did we lose all those characters, but Sega also decided, hey, this comic that was originally made back in the 90s with characters that we don't care about anymore, let's basically, and with interpretations of our characters that we don't care for anymore, like Sonic having all this depth and romance and parents and stuff like that, they said, this is perfect. So we're going to use this as a clean slate to basically get all of the game characters in line with their game counterparts. We're going to erase like all their, we're going to basically have an in-universe thing where they get transported to a new universe. They forget all their memories of the old world, and now
Hmm.
Sonic, he doesn't have a romance with Sally. He doesn't have parents. All the
Oh
game
my
characters,
god.
yeah, all the game characters are basically like their game selves, and then all of the freedom fighters have basically gotten most of their personalities snatched away from them. So now they're just like Sonic's friends. Like they're not like his childhood friends. They're just people he knows who he is friends with. All of the cool villains are gone. All of the OCs are gone. We have a fresh start. And then eventually, something else came up. I think like Ken like filed a new lawsuit, but this is kind of up in the air. Most people on the inside say that he didn't really have anything to do with this part. But then something else came up with Archie, and then it just got completely canceled. So
Damn.
part of the reason that most people think that Sega doesn't want to do anything this kind of crazy or risky is one, Ken Penders was the one who kind of introduced a lot of those things, and people didn't really like them.
I
And two,
see. Okay.
they have this all this baggage around it. So no, we don't want Sonic to have parents. No, we don't want him to have romance. Like that just causes too much drama.
Yeah.
Um, to the point where, by the way, so one of the things is that people really want Sonic and Amy to get together. That's a thing that people really like. And the people who work at Sega now have like on the American side have said like, oh yeah, Sega's official stance is that, and to clarify, Sonic's and Amy's dynamic for years was that Amy would chase after Sonic, but Sonic wasn't really interested. But there were moments where you could go, "Oh, maybe maybe he does like her or whatever." Their official stance now that they have told nobody except for just people in house is that, oh yeah, Sonic does like Amy now. He just doesn't want to date her, and they won't ever show like on-screen romantic affection. And Amy's also cool with this, so she doesn't chase after him anymore. So now they're just like platonic pals, but they secretly do love each other. We just never put that in the games, or we'll ever show it ever again.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So that's where Sonic is now. Is that all the characters have been like completely stripped of any basically humanity. They're all archetypes, and they're all just kind of like, I care for you guys. You're all my friends. I really care for you. And that's kind of where we're at now.
See, that's interesting because, again, from somebody who's on the outside looking in, I always just assumed it was Sonic and Amy. So when I saw your video and I saw Sally, I was like, who the hell? Like, who's this? And then I think immediately you were able to convince me that Sally was far more interesting and worthy of, I guess, being the canon love interest for Sonic than Amy ever was. Because I just see Amy and I'm like, oh, pink hedgehog. That visually, I guess that just makes sense in my ape brain. Or it's like blue and pink together. Got it. Okay.
They're probably dating.
Probably. They're probably, hooking up on the side when the credits roll and all that. Oh God, what a horrible thought. But the I don't know. I just found that interesting when I mentioned Archie Sonic to Richard. And his immediate was like oh no.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
what everyone knows it for is Ken Penders. That's what everyone. That's anytime you type in like Archie Sonic, like there's a video that has like 1 million views that's just like talking about the lawsuit with Ken Penders and all of his ridiculous stuff he made. So like this is mostly what people know it for is like
I see.
all the stuff he wrote. And to be fair, some of the stuff he gets blamed for were things he didn't even write, but he's the face of like all that's bad with Archie, and people just remember, oh, the Archie Sonic comic. That's the one with like Ken Penders, and it's all weird and gross and bad,
Because I saw the writer for the at least the issues that you sent me. It was Ian Flynn, I think was the name of the writer, and I'm like, okay, that's a name to keep an eye out for some of these future. Like if I ever were to go back and read like much more of this, that's a name to look out for when going back into this stuff. So now I know another name with Ken Penders. It's like oh, that guy. It's probably garbage, or it probably has Sonic in a Nazi outfit or something.
I mean, and the funny thing is like all of his ideas are actually kind of fun, but like he either explains them in such a boring way, or they're just thrown like haphazardly in and then they're just dropped. But then like Flynn comes in and he actually takes all of the echidna lore and he like makes it really fascinating, really interesting and all that kind of stuff. So it's just one of those things where like as soon as he came on board, he was just the perfect guy to do it because he had grown up with the comics. And so because when you got to remember when the comic came out, it was 1993, I believe.
Oh my God.
So literally Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 were out and like maybe CD. And so like you have like nothing to work off of basically. And also the biggest thing is that where are you going to find a Sonic fan? They're all children. They're all literally, being born as we speak, So all the people who worked on the comic for a decade were not Sonic fans for the most part. There are a few like miscellaneous people who would become artists and they were fans. But most of them were not Sonic fans. They were just guys doing a job, So in their head, like they have no like concept of like what the fans want or whatever. Or like, what people really like about Sonic because they're creating what people like about Sonic because they don't have much to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So when Flynn comes on, he's a fan of the games and the comic itself. So he was the perfect guy to get the job because he actually like really cared about this universe and wanted to see these ideas go places.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing to me how some people in certain positions of power when it comes to making executive long-reaching decisions for a franchise clearly have either no idea what they're doing or they just simply don't care. What's interesting about like Sonic, what you're saying, it's like people that come in and they do it just because it's a job. It's not something they actually have a passion for. Like there's a lot of franchises unfortunately out there like that get just thrown to the rocks because they have people at the forefront that just don't care or are ignorant, whether willfully or not. People that either like have like a massive ego or just like, I know what's best for this franchise, and I know it's like no, don't do that. But it's good that somebody like Ian Flynn, who understands Sonic, who understands the little like the I always think of like the micro narratives and the macro narratives with a lot of things. Like the big overarching, Robotnik versus Sonic thing, that's like the macro narrative. But the little interactions that Sonic has with Sally, or the two characters that get married, and the issues that I read, those are like little micro things. And it's cool when you have somebody at the helm that seemingly knows what the hell they're doing with both micro and macro narratives, like Ian Flynn, who gets it, who understands pacing, who understands timing, who understands being faithful to a character and writing smartly in a way that fits, what the character would realistically say and do based on past things. It's cool when you get somebody at the forefront who actually can sit at the head and go, this is what people want. This is what I believe to be true regarding this franchise. This is what I'm going to do. And it actually works, and it's actually successful. And I'm not saying Ken Pendergrass is like a terrible writer or anything like that, just because I've never read those Archie comics that he did. I'm kind of curious about the Nazi Knuckles kind of thing, just because how weird that is. But there are just some people that fall into that camp too. Of I always think about there's a clip on Hell's Kitchen where they're doing the, I don't know how familiar you are with Hell's Kitchen, that like the structure of the show.
I've heard of it and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Like I know the premise.
Yeah, so like in the very first episode of each season, they have the contestants do their signature dishes. That's the first challenge when you come in. And there's always one instance I really like where one of the contestants, who actually ended up being the winner for that season, he cooks this dish and he has a great idea for it, but the execution is just garbage. And Gordon, he famously just goes like I like the idea, but the execution sucked. And then that's always what I think about when I think about certain people who have, that have the heart to do certain franchises, but they just don't, unfortunately, they just don't have the feel for it, like the natural talent or the objective know-how regarding something. And it's always frustrating as a fan of any franchise to see it being handed to someone like that. Somebody who clearly cares, but they just don't have the talent for it. They don't have that understanding that goes even further beyond just the base level for a franchise. That's the vibe that I get with Archie, like the two eras of Archie Sonic that you've talked about.
Yeah. No, I can see. And by the way, I sent you the Nazi echidnas in the.
Okay. Okay. Oh my god.
It's pretty blatant.
Yeah, that's like they might as well be stormtroopers at that point with that kind of symbolism.
Yeah. Well, and like
allegory.
And so the interesting thing with Ken is that like because the thing people always meme on is like, oh, he loves Knuckles. It's like, well, not really. Knuckles is just kind of his excuse to like do his own weird like sci-fi fan fiction, because Knuckles, the big problem with the Knuckles comics is that he basically never does anything. So like so the backstory for Knuckles in the comic that Ken comes up with is that his father, Locke, has a dream from apparently God, where they're like, all right, in the future, Knuckles is gonna fight like this bit, like, and he hasn't had his son yet. He's like, some echidna is going to fight this like ancient evil, and it's gonna destroy the world. And so he's like, oh my gosh, the world's gonna end. He's like, the world's gonna end. What do I do? And so he goes to his like forefathers, and they're like, well, you know what you can do? You can like prepare for the future. And he's like, what do I do? He's like, you can create a savior. So create a savior. All right. So like, we're going to like train him together. We're going to guide him, to fulfill his destiny. No. Instead, what we're going to do is that Locke decides he is going to perform genetic experimentation on his own DNA. Then he's going to have sex with his wife, and unknowing to her that he's done this stuff to him. Then when because echidnas lay eggs, he's going to then take the egg once it's born away from his wife and drain it, just like pump it full of radiation, so that Knuckles becomes a living bioweapon who can then save all of reality. He does not consult his wife on this. This is not what they told him to do. They just told him you need to create a savior. And then what he does is, because he's part of a cult of echidna brotherhoods of forefathers who lived like for hundreds of years, who basically watch over the world, but are really shit at their job and are like kind of assholes and literally tried to murder a child once. They then what happens is he raises Knuckles and then pretends to kill himself, and then Knuckles grows up alone thinking that his dad like died and he's like the last person alive. He also did not tell him about his mom, who divorced his father because he was like, you're a fucking asshole, and also you want to take our son away to live in the wilderness. So he just told Knuckles that like, oh, your mom's just like gone or whatever, and so he assumed that like she died. So then that all happens. So then Knuckles is doing all this shit, and then he eventually meets his dad, and his dad is basically like, yeah, like I had to do it. I had to do it to save the world. Like, what the fuck do you want from me, Knuckles? And then Knuckles is just like, well, Dad, when you put it that way, that's that makes sense. And then years later, his dad dies from like pancreatic cancer. That's the big meme, but he's dying from like something. And then him and Knuckles have a deathbed conversation where his father kind of repents of his sins and says all the stuff he did was really bad. And then Knuckles in the future learns that, by by trying to control his daughter in the same way his father controlled him, he's actually making similar mistakes. And so now he's going to give his daughter the chance to become her own person. And then Knuckles grows how to be a good dad.
Wow. That's a lot. That's
Those are the kinds of things he was writing.
So that's the thing. Like, if somebody, I don't. That's insane. That's like the ramblings of a crazy person or somebody on cocaine. But if somebody were to translate that to a video game, I'd be kind of into that just because of how insane that is.
Yeah. That's the real twist of the Knuckles stuff, is that people always meme on it for like the Nazi echidnas, or there's literally a story where Charmy B goes to a amusement park with his friend, and they eat some food that has lemon sundrop dandelion poisoning in it, LSD, and it kills his friend. And so then he has to learn to take responsibility for his life and then get married. So like that's a whole, and so like Ken was constantly trying to like tackle like real ideas, but he just did it in like the most like sledgehammer way with like Sonic characters. But the real twist is that I actually like a lot of his comics from a like just like, oh my gosh, this is insane.
He sounds a lot like the Stephen King of the Sonic world, where like Stephen King has all these like, this guy just like does like lines of cocaine before he writes any of his stories. Like you get something like It that has a really great premise where it's a clown that is it's an extraterrestrial creature in the shape of a clown that feeds on the fear of children in a small town. That's a great idea. Unfortunately, it does not need elements like a child gangbang or like constant rape or anything like that. Like it doesn't need any of that weirdo shit that he throws in there. And I'm not saying Sonic the Hedgehog goes that far with it, but it's like you have this idea and it's so interesting, but it's almost like it's like Stephen King and Ken Pendergrass, they can't help themselves to like go even further, and they just don't have the natural ability for subtlety, for like massaging messages in there or massaging arcs or anything like that. It doesn't feel natural. It feels like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole kind of thing. But he just like jams it in there like, this will go in, damn it, and like shoves it in there sideways, and it's all like crooked and weird. That's the vibe that I get from him.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and also like he'll just like, there's a scene where, so Sally, obviously, he writes a little story where she finds out that like, oh man, like my dad lied to me about something, and then like she wants to like get help from Knuckles and like his cult grandfathers or whatever. So like she goes to them, and she's like, Knuckles, you knew all along that like blah 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 blah, I hate you. And then like there's like a scene in there where she's like, I was thinking about it, and remember that time when my dad was like gonna genocide half the population of our people because they were part robot and he was afraid of them? If I were in his position, I feel like I might have done the same thing. He was just kind of being pragmatic, and then we just move on. And that's another Ken story where he writes that in, and you're just like, what do you mean he was being pragmatic?
Yeah, it's the ramblings of a crazy person.
Yeah. And then at the end of the story, she's like, Knuckles, we're no longer friends. I hate you. And then literally like the next issue he writes, they're just like, hey, Knuckles, how's it going? It's like, oh my gosh, what's up, Sally? And they're just friends and we never bring it up again.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of have to at some. That's the thing. Like when you go that far with something, and you almost like write yourself into a corner because it's like, well, how the hell do we continue this? We've basically just like exploded like entire character arcs and dynamics and just introduce all this weird stuff that we really have no idea how to continue or anything like that. It's almost like you have to redo it at that point. But yeah, that's a lot for because that's just crazy to me that there's this whole world of Sonic the Hedgehog that I don't know about. That I think I never would have found out any of this if I hadn't seen that video of yours. I would have just been like ignorant of all this stuff, and I would have continued to just go, "Oh, Sonic the Hedgehog video game, goofy, got it. Don't need to play it or anything like that." But I don't know, like at least with like Sonic the Hedgehog, like I make fun of Sonic the Hedgehog a lot, but I've been impressed by Sega has actually kind of turned it around as far as the public perception of Sonic nowadays. Which I've been, I mean, this really doesn't have anything to do with Archie Sonic, just because this is like now, and Sega obviously doesn't really want anything to do with Archie Sonic anymore. But just in a general sense, it's interesting, and that's the cool thing though about them rewriting the ship on not Archie Sonic, sorry, a normal Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog nowadays. There's a chance that Archie Sonic, also, you know, what helps too is fans might go and be really into Sonic the Hedgehog, especially younger kids, and then they spend all this fucking time on YouTube anyway. They might go on YouTube and then see your video about this and get really into Archie Sonic. And if enough people really like it and really demand it, there might be... It's always possible. Weirder things have happened. There's always a possibility that Sega might relent if there's enough demand and bring Archie Sonic back, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if Ian Flynn is still alive, or I don't know if any of the.
Oh, he currently writes on the games. So.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah,
there
he
you
started
go.
Working on Archie Sonic, and he's been their go-to guy ever since, basically.
Oh, good. Yeah. I'm not sure I agree with some of his creative decisions with some of these games, but
I believe. Well, okay. So to be clear, he worked on the comics for the rest of the time, and then this most recent game was
most recent. Okay.
Yeah, the very, very most recent.
Okay. So he's involved with like Superstars, for instance, the one that's coming out this year.
Yeah, he worked on that, and then also Frontiers.
Oh, he did do Frontier. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, that's what I mean. Is that the like like Forces or like like the Sonic 06 or any of those? No, he was he was purely in the comics for all of that time, and people were constantly saying like, "Hey, he's so good, like writing stories for the comics, you know." You should put him on the games, and so eventually that happened. So
that makes me more curious to check out not Sonic Forces, but not Frontiers. Not Forces, Frontiers. It's too many fucking F's with these Sonic games. But the Sonic Superstars, because I think that does look interesting. So it's a little more interesting to hear that Ian Flynn is involved with the writing of that one, because that game does look cool. Like, strangely enough, both like Sonic and Mario have a game coming out later this year that both kind of switch it up as far as the animation style with what they usually go for with these 2D games. And that's I think that's really cool. It's like a renaissance of these old mascots, especially with their newfound success in the mainstream, with like Mario with the movie and Sonic with the movies and the Netflix show or what have you. So it's cool to see. I mean, as somebody, again, as on the outside looking in, I'm happy for the people that like Sonic the Hedgehog, because Sonic the Hedgehog fans are like some of the most like, they've been abused for so long with like people making fun of the Sonic, like people, assholes like me that come in and go, this is stupid, and like I don't like it, but I'm happy for them that it's finally like even an old curmudgeon like me can look at some Sonic the Hedgehog stuff now and go like, oh yeah, this is actually pretty good, like these movies. Because I remember when the movie came out, and I was excited to see it just because I wanted to make fun of it. Because of that, they had that like really ugly Sonic in the trailer initially, and when I saw that gave me such a huge belly laugh that made me more interested in the movie, just to see how like horrifying Sonic looked in that first initial trailer for the movie. And then I remember when I went to go see it finally with my ex, because we made that our Valentine's Day date, to go see it, like get drunk and laugh at it. And I remember during the beginning, there's the part where Sonic's running on the road and he sees the turtle, and he picks up the turtle and he starts running with it. And the camera is like zoomed in on the turtle's face, and they're playing "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen. And I remember loving that so much, just that little visual gag. And I turned to my ex and I said, "We have a problem. This is actually like genuinely cute. This is genuinely good."
Yeah, it's very
So,
cute.
but I've been impressed by how they've been able to turn it around. That even, cynical old fuckers like me can go like, "Oh, yeah, this is pretty good." Like a begrudging respect almost. Those movies are far sight better than the fucking Mario movie, to be, to be perfectly honest too. But, and I don't even hate the Mario movie. I just find it so, just like, it's like a big nothing of a movie to me.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a. I assume it's like cool for you too to see the kind of like Sonic Renaissance in a sense, just because you have such a connection to Archie Sonic in particular. I'm not sure entirely sure what your history is with Sonic outside of Archie Sonic. So I was curious about that too.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as like being happy for the way things are now, especially with the movies, I'm very happy for those because we always, I think like when you're in a franchise for so long, you always forget that, oh wait, like kids play these, like or like kids are into these characters too. So like I think
Mm-hmm.
it's really nice that those movies exist, and I could just imagine being a kid and then like growing up and being like, oh man, Knuckles is so cool, Sonic's so cool, Tails is so cool, and like having those as like formative memories of like getting into Sonic and like seeing like Super Sonic on the big screen and all those things. That's got to be like really special. And and these movies aren't like brain rotted, fodder. So like
No.
it's really something where it's like I'm really happy from like kind of like the the seasoned veteran who's like, oh, I wish I would have had that back in my day when I was a child.
Yeah.
You're just kind of happy for other people. So I really like it from that angle. But then also like so the way I got into Sonic was basically trying to remember because I have a lot of different like formative memories of it. Because as far as like the comic itself, I just remember going into a IGA, which is like a food market, and they just had one on the rack, and I opened it up, and I was just like, "What is this?" And then I grabbed it. But then as far as the games are concerned, I dabbled in some of the classics games, and then my friends would show me games. So it was mostly just being around Sonic through other people and just through it just kind of being a thing that you would see
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Yeah.
So, and to me, I guess like unfortunately with the Sonic fan base, right? You have all these factions. Some people want him
Yes.
to be classic, some people want him to be modern, some people maybe want him to be like Archie, or they want him to be like the new comics that are coming out, or they want him to be like the movie. And for me, like I never had that kind of faction mentality because I grew up with the classics, which are cartoony and all that stuff. Then I had Shadow, where he uses guns and is murdering people, and then I had Sonic SatAM, which is kind of like this darker take, and
Mm-hmm.
then also Sonic Adventure, which is more whimsical and kind of adventurous. So to me, I
Yes.
just grew up understanding, oh, Sonic can be anything, you know. He's like a comic book character. He's like Batman, Batman can be whimsical and silly and goofy, or he can also be like a really deep, dark character drama or a mood piece,
Mm-hmm.
or he could be an action adventure in between,
Yeah.
like with like the Justice League cartoon. Um, and that's kind of, I guess, where I stand with the fan base is that I think now,
Yeah.
unfortunately, more than ever, it's become more tribal, and there are more people drawing lines in the sand of like
Yeah.
what is Sonic? What does it mean to really be a Sonic fan? There was a whole discourse on Twitter of like,
Oh my
honestly,
god.
if you grew up
Yeah.
with Sonic SatAM, which is based on, it's like the same kind of world as the Archie Sonic comics, it's like you're not really a true Sonic fan. And obviously, like for someone like me, I don't really care because I have all the stuff I love. But I could see people are like you're saying like I've been here since the beginning, but since I started at like point, I'm just not a valid Sonic fan because it's not based on the games. Like what is this nonsense? And it's like you have so many other franchises like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, superhero comics who embrace having a variety of different versions. I mean, like, and I also think like, would these people say the same thing about Kingdom Hearts? Because all the Disney characters, especially like Donald
Oh,
and
I
Goofy,
bet they would.
they're like they are nothing like
Yeah.
their movie or it's like, oh, are we gonna be like, oh, the original intention is lost, it's awful. So like you have all these other franchises who embrace diversity in that sense, But then Sonic is like, no, it is rigidly this or this or this. And that's
Yeah.
just kind of unfortunate to see. Even if I think from the general public perspective, Sonic has never been doing better, you know? So it's kind of more like the internal stuff that I see.
Yeah. Well, it's like I guess that's because I'm not super into the how do I word this? The I guess the point I'm trying to make is that from somebody who's on like the outside looking in, I guess I'm sparing myself that deep extensive knowledge of Sonic the Hedgehog so that I don't have my perception of it be warped into thinking like it's bad because it's this other thing and it's more successful than like ever before, basically, as far as mainstream attention. But it's almost like PlayStation now, where like I have such like a deep extensive knowledge of that, and I absolutely hate the direction that it's going in. And I would love to be ignorant and see like from an outside looking in, just like casual perspective, to be like, oh yeah, PlayStation, it's great. It's like, oh, the Spider-Man's coming out, it's great. Oh, it's so good. I have God of War, it's great. And I'm the guy that's like has I guess like too much knowledge about it, and I'm like, no, I don't like this. I don't like where this is going.
Well,
But
and that is a barrier for most people when I try and them Archie Sonic is that they'll be like,
yeah,
well, why is Shadow less important in this? It's like, well, because in the context of this world, he's not really that special. It's like, well, that's not okay, you know? Or, you know, if you like Amy, let's say you want Amy in Sonic, it's like, well, Amy is actually like depicted as being a lot younger than Sonic in the Archie universe because of a few other things. She's kind of depicted as more like a younger sister figure. Where Sally is like the love and just like, well, I don't want that, you know, that sounds awful, you know. And then of course, if you love Knuckles in the games is just a lone echidna who guards the Master Emerald, but now he has like this extensive family tree and a techno cult of cousins and alternate realities and his dad and all this drama. And his story is no longer about guarding the Master Emerald. It's legitimately about Knuckles' whole story is about coping with having an abusive father and an abusive upbringing, and how do you cope with the loss of people, you know, how do you cope with the loss of someone like that, and how your actions have either harmed your family or harmed yourself, and where do you take responsibility, where do you need to move on. And by the end of his story, he basically comes to a state of peace, of understanding that even if I could get all the things I wanted back and like get the closure I want with my relationships with the people I cared about who I've lost, that wouldn't change the fact that what I have now is not worth giving up. And then he's able to kind of move on from that baggage and cope.
yeah, that's great.
That is nothing like
No, no,
you know,
you're
or
not,
like, you know,
no.
yeah. So that's kind of the big barrier, and that's again why I was like, oh, I can easily recommend this to you because you're someone who doesn't give a shit. So
Yeah, that's pretty much the blunt way of putting it. Yeah.
yeah, Knuckles' dad is he's a piece of shit. There's
Oh
a
yeah.
great scene. There's a great scene where what happens is that the Knuckles, you know, he lives on Angel Island or whatever, and he has to guard the Master Emerald, but he's decided that he's going to protect the whole world. He's like, we don't just need to be
Yeah.
on our little island. He's like, the whole world needs help, and like obviously we need to protect our people here too. But you can do that, Dad. But I promise that I would help my friends take down Eggman once and for all. Because if we do that, everyone will be safe. And he's like, fuck you. Like his dad's like, oh, you're giving up on, you know, your heritage and your family and all this stuff. You know, fuck you. I'm out of here. And he's like, Dad, he's like, nope. You know, he leaves. Because to him, Knuckles is supposed to be a savior. He's supposed to be the one who's going to protect his people. So then later we get a little scene where they're talking through like chaos magic or whatever. And he's like, hey, come home now. And he's like, why? Why do you need me up there? And he's just like, well, you know, your people are suffering because you left, you know, and like obviously he's like, well, you know, aren't you supposed like aren't isn't everyone else helping? And he's like, well, you know, different factions of the echidnas are fighting and all this stuff. You know, if you had bothered to show up, you know, maybe this could have been better. And then he says, yeah, and he's just like, okay, Dad, but like you're watching it, you can keep things under control. And he's like, you know, you're watching everyone, right? And he goes, no, you know, or he's like, oh, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I've been busy. He's like, oh, right, you know, our people come first. And then he goes, no, I've been looking for our lost cult of grandfathers because they're gonna, you know, I need to put them back together. He's like, what? You're not watching over everyone? It's like, yeah, if you were up here, you could help me. And then he goes, you know what? Actually, son, you should come back and bring all your friends too. And he's like, why? He's like, of course they'll follow you. He's like, they're not my soldiers, Dad. They're my friends. So they're having this whole back and forth. And then eventually he says, you know, I can't do it. You know, I can't do this without you, Knuckles. Because if you don't show up, I can't guarantee the safety of your mother. And
Ooh.
and Knuckles is like, "Motherfucker, you did not." And he like punches the screen. And he's like, he's not actually gonna let her get hurt. Like he's
Yeah.
like traumatized by this. And he's like, he's like, do I go back? Do I need to, what? And he's like, okay, no, my dad, he taught me to be a guardian. And they have these really personal moments too, where he's like, Dad, I'm doing everything you taught me to do. I'm looking at this from another angle. I am trying to protect the greater good. I'm doing all these things. I'm doing what the Brotherhood of our cult of grandfathers was apparently supposedly doing all along. I'm protecting the planet. And he's like, no, son, you need to come back and do what I tell you. And he basically tells him to fuck off. And that's their last conversation they ever have in the comic before his dad dies, sacrificing himself to save his son. And so both of them never get closure to know that his dad was sorry. And then Knuckles doesn't get the closure of, his dad basically growing to be a better person, or
Yeah.
even getting to make up for that. And Knuckles has to cope with the loss of that, of all of his mixed up emotions about his dad. And it's such like an amazing story, but it's buried in this comic that no one ever knows about.
That's really unfortunate.
Sounds pretty interesting, doesn't it?
It does. It's just it's like digging for like gold in like this big pile of shit.
Yeah. And there's a great final moment where he's fighting this other echidna who's like basically literally the way he was created was that because Knuckles' dad did all those experiments on him. Whenever he finally unleashed his power, these other echidnas were like really scared of him, so they tried to drain him of his power, and all that power ended up backlashing onto this other echidna, who then turns into basically like the anti-Knuckles. So everything they feared of Knuckles, which was that he was going to be this evil demigod with all this power and he wouldn't be control it, that goes onto this guy, and he actually does want to destroy the world. He doesn't want to be a savior, and
Oh.
so he's the reason that Knuckles' dad dies. And so they have this little scene where he's like, Knuckles, I know all the history of our past that they never gave you. I have all this stuff. Ask me for what you want and I can give you anything. And he goes, what do I want? And then he just punches him and he says, I want my father back. I want to be able to look my mother in the eye again. I want to be able to see my people again. And I want you off my island. And they just have like this big fight. And it's so good. It's like this great moment. And Knuckles is crying. And you have all these different emotions. But Game Knuckles, he just like, he guards the Master Emerald. He's like a
Yeah.
cool guy, I guess.
I'm Knuckles. Hi.
I'm Knuckles. I don't chuckle. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. And so that's why like with low art, I really want to explore all these videos. I want to make, in the same way I have why Archie Sonic is the best Sonic, I want to talk about why Archie Knuckles is the best Knuckles, how he's this character who explores like abuse and trauma and all these things and how you grow and cope out of that and cling to the people who love you and all that stuff. But some Sonic fans don't want to hear that. They're like, that in a Sonic story? That's cringe. Yeah.
Fuck them. I would hear it. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
That sounds far more interesting than just Sonic goes fast, or Sonic goes fast and says quippy line to insert character name here, and then like runs around a level a little bit. All of this sounds far more interesting than what I've been presented throughout my entire life with Sonic.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like the heart of Sonic for the games that people is his kind of personality, and they also like kind of like the idea of Sonic being more of a aspirational character, where
Sure.
he's kind of just good, and people sort of like develop around him, which is a cool character archetype.
Yeah, I get it.
It's like Superman, that's kind of those things. The problem I always have is I just don't think those stories are well told. Like not like the aspirational hero, but like Sonic doing that idea in his games. I just don't think they're well told. So to me, it's like I'm fine with like an aspirational, simplistic Sonic world. I just don't think they've done a good job in the games, And so even if it's different, I'll much rather take a story that I find engaging and emotionally arresting than, they kind of tried to make Sonic sort of likable here, but he's kind of boring and the voice acting's not very good and the animation's kind of stiff and the audio balancing is so fucked that you literally can't hear some of the lines of the characters and so
is it like that in Frontiers, or is that like slightly better than what we've gotten before?
Frontiers is so the problem I have with it is that it's not terrible, but I do think the animation's just really stiff, which is bad for these cartoony characters. But two, a lot of it is kind of like the whole point of the game is kind of to address basically Twitter complaints. So like you have like people will complain that Knuckles never gets off the island because people want him in stories. So now what we're talking about in the game is like, I should really like explore the world and get off the island and and spend more time with people. And Sonic's like, yeah, man, I believe in you. You should do that. And then you have Amy, and Amy's whole thing is people don't like that she has like a big crush on Sonic because they think it's creepy because they don't understand what cartoon logic is. And so her story is like, you know what? I want to spread love in general to the world, and I want to do that. And Sonic's
Oh
like, man, that's
God.
really awesome. I believe in you, Amy. If you ever need me, we can talk. And then there's Tails, and in previous games, Tails has been written to be like a coward, which people don't really like. So he's like, man, he literally says, I'm wildly inconsistent. And Sonic's like, you know what, man? But sometimes you are like a good character, and you should really like, believe in yourself because of all these other times you did things. And he's like, you know what, Sonic, that's true. And Sonic's like, yeah, man, if you ever need me, I'm right here. I'll listen to your opinions. And so Sonic's like their therapist. And so like, and I don't think the voice acting is very good. So it's like, so to me, it's not much better.
See, like the thing that like when I saw Sonic Frontiers, I just like laughed at it because it looked like a mod almost because
Yes.
it just didn't look right. And then I heard all these people that really liked it, and I was like, what? And even Richard, he said it was really good. He went as far as to platinum the game and everything. And I just like the more I just looked into it, I was just like, I don't get it. Like this just does not look good at all. Like I know it's successful, but it just does not look. Again, it doesn't look right. There's just like Sonic Superstars.
Oh yeah,
that looks right to me, even with that new animation style. Sonic Frontiers though, no, it just looks strange.
absolutely agree. And again, I think the story doesn't help it either. But again, it kind of goes into what you've said about like the Sonic fan base is kind of an abused fan base.
Yes.
To where I think what people really liked about it is that for a decade, we had writers who actively said they didn't know anything about Sonic. They were just doing it for a paycheck, basically. They kind of flanderized a lot of the characters. So when you have Flynn come in and he has all this hype around him, and also he is technically addressing those things and he is doing those things. I don't think he's doing it well, but he is addressing those things. You have this kind of, I think, conflict for the average Sonic fan. And he's like, no, I want to like Sonic now, right? I want Sonic to not be a laughingstock. And I like the fact that a guy who does care about it is writing about it. I like that they are addressing these problems, even if they're not necessarily doing it in a way that's interesting, because for 10 years, you've been getting shit by a decade of horrible games and by people making fun of you for liking Sonic.
Yeah.
So now finally just having any Sonic story that takes itself even mildly seriously and addresses these things, I think people just really like that regardless of the execution, where for me the execution is kind of everything.
Yeah, I mean if like Eddie Murphy once said, if you're in the desert and starving and someone throws you a cracker, you're going to think that cracker is the best cracker you've ever eaten in your life.
Even if it makes your mouth dry.
Yeah, even if it's a regular old saltine cracker, you're gonna think it's the most delicious thing you've ever had.
And for comparison, the Antoine story I told you about, that's kind of the difference where I think Flynn's writing, it might not even be his fault because he's not like in charge of everything. Obviously, he's just kind of writing the dialogue.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure there's a writer's room in Sega. Sega has notes and all that.
Yeah, but so if you compare that to the Antoine story, that whole story is also about addressing that Antoine was written inconsistently. But the reason it works is because his dad dies. Like a scene happened, like a thing happened, and now that is going to change the focus of Antoine's life, and he's going to be a better person. He's going to take action. In Frontiers, Tails says, "I'm wildly inconsistent. I suck." And Sonic goes, "Well, what about these other times where you were really good? Just believe in yourself, Tails." And he goes, "You know what? Next game, I will be better," because he doesn't do anything in the game to actually like build off that. It's not a moment. It's just the character addressing Twitter arguments, and being like, Tails was sometimes good, and next time he will be.
But I might have more respect for it if they literally name dropped Twitter in the video game. If Sonic said like, "Oh, I looked on Twitter and it said the people don't like you because of this," Tail goes, "Oh, really? Okay, let me change that." And then I will write a twit longer about how I have changed over the last like day or so.
Yeah,
I think if they ever directly addressed Twitter in the game, I think I would that would be fucking hilarious. Like I would actually have some respect for that in a way.
They pull a Kingdom Hearts in the loading
screen.
Yes,
that's exactly what I was thinking. They have Instagram basically in Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I want to land on a positive note that you will really respect about Sega here.
Okay.
So Sonic Frontiers came out, and people had a lot of criticism of it for the gameplay and the story.
Yes.
For one, the final boss is like literally just a random gameplay segment that you use for a hacking mini game, and they just made that the final boss, and people are like,
What?
this is garbage. Yeah, they're like, this is garbage. Because basically, the final boss is just like a space bullet hell, which was like the hacking mini game, but it's now like a spaceship. And people were like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And then people were upset that like you couldn't play as all these other characters. They don't do anything in the story. And then people were also upset about just kind of like a lot of like things like, this is an open world Sonic game. What's Sonic most known for? Momentum, where like you can use the terrain to get to different locations. Well, Sonic sticks to the floor like he's got glue on his feet, So what they've done is over the course of this entire year, they've had 3 major updates. And the first update adds in like different mechanics and like adds in momentum, which people wanted. The second update adds in like new challenges and it adds in like the spin dash, which allows you more movement options. And then the third update is going to add in 3 new playable characters with completely customized movesets. And also they're going to redo the final battle. But the big twist is that every single one of these updates is completely free.
Yeah, I think they announced I don't remember if it was Gamescom or one of these presentations where they announced the one where it's the new boss fight with the new playable characters, and I remember thinking, oh, okay, how much is this going to cost? And they said, oh, it's completely free. And I went, oh, okay,
Yeah,
that's cool.
So while it does suck that they, as a company, have to like patch their game up, if you're gonna have to patch your game up, I'm very thankful that it's literally just free, because that means I don't have to pay anything. And then also, if you're someone who comes into the game anytime afterwards, you don't have to worry about that anymore. It's just done. It's fixed. So like, I think it's pretty admirable that not only did they do that, because one of the things that people always criticize Sega for, and they actually did this with a different game, is that they had like microtransactions, or they would have like they would literally make you pay to get Super Sonic. Like you had to pay extra money to have Super Sonic as a character you could play as, when in every other game he was just there. So now they're literally like, they're kind of like remaking the game right in front of you, and they're saying it's all free, it's on us, it's on the house.
That sounds like a very modern video game company move kind of thing.
Yeah. So there is, I do have some respect for them there, where I really would have expected that they would have been like, for this final update where you get 3 new characters and a new ending, that'll be $5.99.
$20 for a new character.
Yeah, $20.
They think they're like Fortnite or something with these pricing models.
They're live services.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's always in my brain the way you say that.
It's nice to receive a Sonic education for the first time, because this is a topic that's like, I'll probably title the video this, like, I'm receiving a Sonic education, and yeah. It's cool. Like, I give Sonic a lot of shit. A lot of it's probably well deserved, just with some of the stuff that I've seen over the years with them, that I'm just like, oh my god, what is this? Like you've got all these years like of Mario coming out, and again, I'm only mentioning Mario just because of the famous like Sega versus Nintendo kind of stuff from back in the day. But you see like Mario coming out now, and he's in like a lot of like really great games, like Super Mario Galaxy, Odyssey, you got the Super Mario 3D World, that kind of stuff. And then you look at Sonic Boom, and it's like, oh. And you look at Sonic 06, it's like, oh. So it's nice that to actually see that Sonic is kind of on the up and up, even if I know I can't really get into most of what they're preaching, to me at least as far as the video games. Now, I must admit that Sonic Superstars does look fun. It's just releasing alongside like Super Mario Brothers Wonder and Spider-Man 2, and I'm like, yeah, no, thank you, Sega. I'm good. But
yeah,
it's cool that the Sonic fan base finally isn't the laughing stock that I think they once felt like for a number of years. That's nice to see.
Yeah, no, I have the same kind of feeling where, again, like someone might say, okay, do you want Archie Sonic to come back? And honestly, no. Like, I don't really think that the creative team, I don't really, like, I feel like the ending it got was at a point where they would have had to make some really dicey decisions, and I don't know if I would have enjoyed where it ended up. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like it got canceled before it could like implode on itself.
No, that's good.
So I'm actually perfectly satisfied with everything I got, because the Flynn era is like, It's like almost 200 issues of just peak fiction that I love. So, and it makes the comic one where it's a very unique story where it actually ends as a tragedy. Eggman wins and everyone fucking dies. So, like,
Wow.
because what he does is he rewrites reality, and that's how you get the reboot universe. So basically, effectively, he killed off all those OC characters in universe because he rewrote the timeline and he like broke it. So like Sonic is no longer has his family, you know, all these OCs you really like, and Eggman gets a new world to terrorize. So like he basically wins in the end. And all of the characters end on basically the most tragic note you could land on. So this will be what I kind of end on is that so because Ken Penders came in and he took away all of the Knuckles characters, right? It just so happened that the story that Flynn was writing at the time was a Knuckles story, which was going to end the Knuckles like storyline, and he was going to reunite with like his mother, and he was going to like face his people, and he was going to save them, and he was going to make up for his mistakes or like his trauma. And because Ken Penders came in at the last second, that story therefore ends with all of the echidnas getting thrown into an alternate dimension by a sin from their past of the echidnas like culture, like something horrible they did.
Hmm.
Some race of people that Flynn actually set up comes in, takes all the echidnas because they're trying to escape being like murdered by Eggman, and he's like, "Hey guys, come through this portal. I'll keep you safe. You know, like we'll get off this island." Like, yeah, of course. So they go through, and it turns out that he sent them to like wherever, and Knuckles can never get them back. He loses his girlfriend, his mom, his baby brother, all of his people. Every one of them is written out of the story by being basically effectively killed off and wiped from existence. And the last shot we ever see of Knuckles is him back home, and he like his friends come home, they're like, "Hey, where's like Julie Sue? Where's all the people?" And he punches the ground just in anger, and then he's just twitching on the ground, and it's just a silhouette. And then that's the last time we ever see Knuckles. He never gets to cope. Sometimes the world will just take the things you love from you. The end.
Okay. That's one way to do it, I guess.
Yeah, and again, that's only because Ken Penders came in mid-story, and so Flynn had to scramble. He's like, "How do I get rid of all the echidnas?" So he just had to delete them. And the final thing he ever says to his girlfriend is just a passive like, "I love you too. You know, see you in a bit." And
Oh
it's like, oh
wow.
my gosh, that's like the most real, like horrific thing you could imagine.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where all the character stories are on these horrific down notes because Flynn was going to have them all get these massive victories. So we were on the Empire Strikes Back basically, and then
Hmm.
the comic just ends.
Oh,
So the comic ends with everyone at their lowest point. The end. Fuck you.
so it basically ends with Infinity War, basically.
Yes, it does. And to me, that makes it one of the most fascinating pieces of fiction I've ever read because you just wouldn't get that, you know.
No, yeah.
Because even in most scenarios, you would think, right, that you would get one of those things where it's like it ends, right, but the comic has ended, but the adventure continues, right? We just don't get to see it. But no, because the editor was like, I want these two to connect. Flynn had to write it to where this is one continuous storyline. The rebooted universe is the old universe being rewritten. All those people are dead now. That is the
Mhm.
canon storyline of what happens. So it's just such a fascinating story that I've never experienced ever in that way. And so, like, to me, I kind of don't want it to come back because it's just such a fascinating piece of fiction. So for me, I'm content with what I got of Archie Sonic. It's got great stories. It has the best versions of all these characters I love, and it has one of the most tragic endings I've ever seen in like any piece of media.
Yeah,
So,
that sounds like a major downer of an ending.
oh, it is. Like, because remember, if you watch my video, Sally's a robot, so she never gets saved. Antoine is in a coma, so he never gets brought back to life, or like healed. Bunny goes off, and we never see her again. Um, and then one of the characters tries to get redeemed, and then they get possessed by a demon. And then another character tries to find happiness and love, and then Eggman locks him in a cell where he'll rot and die for the rest of his life.
Oh, lovely.
Then another character is like a Metal Sonic, and he fights another Metal Sonic to try to like prove that like a Metal Sonic can have humanity. And the other Metal Sonic, because he has been stripped of all his humanity, he cannot find hope. He ends up killing the other Metal Sonic, and he dies in a field, and that's the end of that character. And he's never brought back because we don't get to follow up on that. So like every single character ends in the worst position you could think of, and that's the end of the story. The end. Eggman wins.
Wow. All right.
So if that didn't pique your interest.
Well, I guess in keeping with the spirit of Archie Sonic, I guess I guess we'll wrap
Fair.
it up there with the downer of an ending.
Hug your loved ones, kids.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you as always, Ian, for coming on and educating. Well, this time educating me about Sonic and everything.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me as usual. I genuinely enjoy talking to you, man. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And yeah, where can people find you? Where can people watch your cool ass videos?
They can find me IanWaffles on YouTube, which will probably be linked in the description, I would assume.
Yes.
And yeah, like I don't really post very often, but I'm very proud of all the videos I have made. Like they're all very heartfelt and passionate, and I think you get a kind of a little piece of me from watching it. You know, regardless of if you know what the topic is. So I would recommend all of them. I really like and really enjoy all of them, and I hope to continue making videos. It just kind of depends on when the spark hits me. But
yeah,
when I do make a video, it's always with my full heart. So
yeah, that's
yeah,
very obvious. Yeah.
well, thank you. But yeah, that's it for me.
Alrighty. Yeah. That's the downer of the ending, everybody. Everyone dies. Everyone that you love and Archie Sonic, dead and gone. That's something.
Bye.
Bye.